Welcome to my YouTube channel, and today we are going to be looking at data structures and in more specific the hash tables. So basically, what is the hash tables data structure in Python? So it's a function that can be able to insert data. It can also update the data, retrieve data actually, and also delete data, but in a more structured manner. So that is why we create this sort of function in Python. And the really good thing about it is that it's almost like the data dictionary, where you have both a key and a value. So we will be assigning data to the key and also data to a value pair, and all of that would be incorporated also using an array. So the first thing I'm going to do here is just to create a class, and I'm going to give that class hash data, and then I am going to be implementing the Python function syntax, which is the dev init. Of course, my IntelliSense sort of like generates all that for me, which is awesome. And the next thing that I want to do is to initialize a variable called the number. So basically what this number will do is that it will hold a number for an input number that the user does input. And that I am just going to be assigning that to the same number. So now we have that class created. The next thing that I want to do is to also assign also a data list. I need a variable called the data list to actually store the array. And because we will be retrieving data within the range, so basically the number that we have imputed, so the number that the user imputes, it needs to be within that range. That's basically what the syntax will do. So it's just calling for and in range, and I am referencing the number that I had created earlier. So the next thing that I want to do is to create the hash function. So what this hash function will do, like I mentioned earlier, is to take in an index. So we are going to be given the key index. We're going to be giving that 0 because, of course, in Python, programming in general, we'll always start our first index with 0, with the number 0. And of course, the next will be a value of 1, which will be the value. So we are saying we want to be able to split or divide. We want to be able to divide the key and the values. So that is where I am going to be using the hash function. So I will be creating that, and that will just call that hash. Yep. And then I can take out some of the things that the IntelliSense sort of like also generated, but also I also want to give it another parameter called the key. And then I can, just to give it more context, I can also of course comments are always really good because they do help you understand what you are writing much better. So I'm just gonna add some comments to that. So this hash function will split or rather divide the array list that we created, that it would create in the data list variable. It will divide that into kind of like a dictionary, which will have both the key and the value. Oops, that looks like a really long comment, but it is necessary to always give comments, and it's just because in case I want to reference back to the codes, I can remember what I did there. And then the next thing that I want to do is here, I just want to return the hash, and of course we are going to be using the modulus operator in Python, and I'm just going to be saying the key using that modulus and also the number. So that's what I'm going to be doing here. So that is our hash function created. Now we want to create our operators. So we've got within the hash function, we've got the insert and the get and the delete. So we want to create the insert function first. And basically we want to be able to insert a value and a more like to make it a lot much easier. Let's say I want to insert both a string and a number, or should I say a word? Yes, a word and a number in our data. So we're just creating a structure to store these values, right? So we have it would have the parameter for key and value, and in there I'm just going to because we are going to be using we're going to be using the hash function that we had created, because remember what the hash function does is that it takes in whatever a user inserts and it splits it into the key and the value. And so I'm going to be using a for loop to loop through that. So we're saying that for pair in the data list variable that we create, we want that to be indexed, and also and then we can have our if statement now. So we'll have the if statement. So basically we're saying that if the pair is 0, which is the first our first key, we want that to be the key, which is the first letter, or the first letter, we want that to be the key. Then we want the next index, which is 1, to be the value. And then so this would just update the whatever the user imputes. So the user imputes something like dress, and gives it a value of 5. So this sort of function will take the pair, the first word, which is the dress, as since we've indexed it as 0, and assign that to dress, and then we'll take the number, which the user gave it as 5, and assign that to 1. So that's all about the 0 and the 1. So all we want to do here is to return, and then we want to return the data list, the index, which is really important, and the key and the value. So that is how we create the insert function. Now the next thing we want to create is the get operator. Now this get operator is similar to the insert, but the only difference is that rather than inserting, we want to retrieve. We would want to retrieve the data that we've already inserted. And so here I am just going to pass it the parameter, the key parameter as well. And of course, the next step is for us to use the hash function that we had created earlier, which, like I mentioned earlier, it's to split using the index to split the using the index to actually split the data into what is the key and what is the value. So now that we have that, we can also use a for loop. So we would just say for pair in our data list, for pair in our data list, we want the index for that. Now basically what this is that we just want to know, well, if the pair, if the pair is 0, which is the first we just want to know, well, if the pair is already, if we know that since we're using the index, if the pair is equal to 0, then we know that the index 1 will be the value. So what we want to do is to actually return the index, because that's what we want to get. We can decide to switch things up and retrieve the key, which is index 0, but we want the value, which is index 1. So that's what we're returning here. And so I'm just going to always comment and I'm just going to say, this will return the value associated with the key. So whatever value is associated with a key, it will return that value. And we just, of course, since we're using the if statement, we want to have an else statement as well. So we can just say something like key, maybe the key was not found, something like that. Oh, that's an error, so I'm just going to correct that. There is another way of creating an else statement, which is the raise. It's also another good method for creating an if statement, but I'm just going to be using this at some point during my Python videos. I'm going to be using that method, raise an error. Okay, so the next thing that we are going to create is the delete method. Just like the insert that actually takes in values and keys, and the get that actually retrieves a value, the delete function, the role of the delete function will be actually to delete a key. So basically we have the delete and also set the parameter to be key as well, and just similar to the other functions, we are going to be utilizing the hash function to do that splitting for us. And then we are going to have our for loop as well. Using the for loop, we are going to be using a method called enumerate. So this enumerate method, what it will do for us is that it would index each of the data list as well. So we have that data list and we can just pass in our index. And then we want to use our if statement as well. So we've got the if. So we're saying that if index 0, just as similar to the get method, if the index 0 is equal to our key, we want to use the delete function within Python. We want to delete from our data list, we want to delete that index and the variable I. So that would remove the key value pair. And so that would remove the key value pair. We just want to also let's just nicely comment that out. It's always nice to do a nice comment. So we're just going to comment that, and we just say it will remove the data key value pair. The key value pair, yes. Okay, so we want to return something. We want to return a statement. So if this does not happen, right? We want to print something. And like I said before, there is also another method for actually returning a key error. So a key error is usually kind of like an error that comes up on our console. It's a really good way. It's a really good method in Python. So that is what our function will do. And now we can see that our function is ready. So the next step that we would like to do is to actually test this. So I just changed the The else statement, I changed that to raise key error, which I think I just want us to kind of like have a feel of how this method sort of works. So now we want to test our function. So I'm just going to be giving our hatch data, which is our class. I'm just going to give that a variable, and I'm going to be using not get. We want to actually insert. So I want to insert something into the function. So using the function, so I'm just going to have apples, and remember this data structure is all about utilizing indexes. So apples and value, and so I've got apples and I've got the value 5, the number 5, right? So the same thing I'm just going to repeat. I'm going to have another key called the banana, and then also assigning a value of 7 as well. And just for us to have more, let's just play around with that. Let's create another one called the hatch table. No, not called let's create oranges, right? So I'm just gonna have oranges, and we can assign a value of 3. Let's just say assign a value of 3 to that as well. So now the next thing we want to do is, of course, save our file and then run the script. So but before we do that, we can actually create another data. We also want to get data, right? We don't only want to insert. So we are going to be creating another line of codes that can get data for us. Now, using the print statement, we can just call in our hatch data variable and the get function. And now we want to get something. So let's say we want to get apple, right? And also to just to save time, I'm just going to copy and paste that 3 times because we want to remember, the get function returns the values just as we created it while we created the function. So when we give it the key, we want it to return the values. So now we have apples, banana, and oranges. So now if we run that in our terminal, we've got apples based on what we inserted into the insert function, and we also got 7 and 3 as well. Now the next function we want to test is the delete function. So basically, we want to be able to delete data that we create, and also we also want the good thing we could also do is that after we delete the data, we can also find out, we can also test to see that data no longer exists in our data structure. So I'm just going to be using the same variable that I used in storing. So I'm just going to say, and then using the delete method as well. And then, just want to, delete. Okay, so delete, and then I can pass in one of the keys that was inserted. So let's just say pass in orange. So we want to delete orange. And then also, after we have this, we also want to print. So remember, when the function deletes a key, what it does is that what we set it to do in our function, we set it to raise a key error. So now that we have that, so we're just going to use so now we want to then use the get method to test, to make sure that we don't have that orange anymore. So as you can see, it raised the key error, which was key not found. So that's what the key error method is actually very useful. So apart from using else statements and just simple strings, I think this key error, I found it really, really useful. So now we know that key orange, no, it's no longer available within our data structure. So that is what this hash table function is all about. That is how we can structure our data. Thank you for watching.